Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Guyana Action Party, a member of the coalition, I am pleased to participate in the 2023 budget debate. But before I go into the substance of my presentation, I would like to mention that listening to the Minister of Foreign Affairs is like listening to nothing of substance. The most important topic that he should have been speaking about is the one where we have a territorial problem with our neighbor. Mr. Speaker, this is so important, and did he mention it? Did he tell us what is happening in the International Court of Justice? He did not. This is a very shameful presentation where the people of Guyana cannot be briefed and told what is happening to safeguard our...
A bunch.
Honorable member, I have every budget debate circulated the words and shame, and I'm hearing cries of shame, fullness, and nonsense. All of those are on parliamentary.
Come on, you know better.
You have to withdraw it.
Okay, I'm so advised, I withdraw, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask or propose that the Honorable Todd goes back to a foreign relations, foreign policy school. Mr. Speaker, first, please allow me to express my sincere condolences to the people of Caneview, Mocha, who face the wrath of the PPP's hurricane apartheid, mixed with a big dose of dictatorship and tempered by ignorance in conflict resolution. The pictures and videos of the police pressing an African woman down in the mud and children in tears while their homes were being destroyed will be vividly remembered when Guyanese go to cast their votes at the next general and regional elections. Mr. Speaker, Guyanese will also not forget the likes of Sue and men in the engine room of the PPP who feast on the largest of Guyana while the poor are relegated to poverty and as a way of life. We remember the statements, Sue is my friend. He looks after everything. He looks after everything. And Honorable Todd just said just now that y'all believe and y'all practicing honesty and integrity. Remember Sue. Mr. Speaker, we sat and listened to the Honorable Senior Minister Ashley Singh as he fed himself and all Guyanese to a heavy dose of pills while imbibing murky liquid that has a striking resemblance to water made available to Guyanese by the PPP. All the while regurgitating work done by others many decades ago. Cut and paste. This chap was cutting and pasting other people's work. The direct beneficiaries, who are the people of Guyana, Mr. Speaker, inclusive of the supporters of the installed PPP, from all reports are very disappointed that the largest budget ever presented in Guyana has little or nothing for them. Mr. Speaker, the deep feelings of disappointment is shared by non-supporters and supporters of the PPP. On my way here this morning, the taxi man told me that this budget, they were expecting so much. They were all hyped and, feel this is really the best we're going to get something out of it. And he said that what he has noticed is that this is the worst budget he's hearing about here. And it has nothing for the people of Guyana. And he said that what used to happen under the Abdul AFC was indeed well done. And today is worse, he said. And that is where the people are talking. The people are speaking. The people in Guyana are speaking. But you are making up your own stories. Where is Mr. Honorable Todd? Mr. Speaker, all of this with the largest budget. A budget, Mr. Speaker, that is beefed up largely by proceeds from a profit-sharing agreement made possible by whom? The APNU AFC when in government. So you're using what we did to now show off with the people and still punishing the people. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Senior Minister of Finance detailed that carbon credits amounting to US $750 million have been agreed to be paid by Hess Guyana Exploration Limited over a period of time. He further stated that an amount of 15% of this amount would be allocated to the development of indigenous peoples. Mr. Speaker, while we welcome this initiative, it would be remiss of me to not detail the transgressions that occurred during the process, or perhaps lack of due process, culminating in this decision. Mr. Speaker, it boggles my mind to know that the indigenous people, the true owners of the forests that allowed us to have carbon sequestration and carbon credits for sale, were not allowed to have free, prior informed consent with regards to the ART process, ART. I note that an attempt was made to whitewash 2-hour meetings in certain communities as meaningful consultations. How can anyone go through the entire process of meaningful consultations and then reach an agreement with regards to ART process in 2 hours? Further, most of the people of the hinterland speak English as a second language. Mr. Speaker, then we were told that the National Two-Shops Council at the last NTC gave its consent for ART TREES. This is the abbreviation for Red Plus transactions. And you don't know what is ART either, so keep quiet. Sorry, Honorable. Again, anyone who attends the NTC conference will know that it is impossible to meaningfully have FPIC of the ART trees process due to the limited time available. Mr. Speaker, to make matters worse, many knowledgeable persons pointed out that the NTC cannot legally give consent for sale of communities' carbon credits. The Amerindian Act allows the Village Council to make decisions, and the Village General Meeting, with the Village General Meeting being the final arbiter. Mr. Speaker, so now we have a half-baked agreement that may very well be challenged in the courts. And that is what the PPP is always doing, Mr. Speaker. Half-baked stuff, half-baked roads, half-baked of everything. Mr. Speaker, in my speech in Parliament on full insurance coverage in case of an oil spill, I advocated that ExxonMobil should make payments to the indigenous peoples directly, and that these payments should be made to the National Two-Shops Council. With this in mind, Mr. Speaker, Guyana Action Party proposes that there be an agreed estimate of the amount of carbon credits available for sale by the hinterland communities of Guyana, and instead of the 15% of income unilaterally assigned to the indigenous communities, an agreed-upon estimate should be paid instead. It must be mentioned that in a recent court ruling, the court pronounced that the indigenous peoples of the Upper Missouri are entitled to ownership of their ancestral lands. This would allow the indigenous people and the people of the hinterland to reap benefits from their care of the environment and encourage to continue to do so, knowing that benefits are available. Mr. Speaker, before the proposal, the NTC should strengthen its administrative capacity and consult with hinterland communities who are the true owners of the carbon credits. Then the true beneficiaries and real owners of the carbon credits would lead the way for a sustainable and beneficial developmental agenda. Mr. Speaker, it's my understanding that carbon credits can be traded on the international market. So what is wrong with involving the indigenous and hinterland peoples in this trade? Mr. Speaker, in this process, it will be good to discuss the suggestion made by Mr. Sidney Allicock, former Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, that there be established an indigenous bank in which all monies for indigenous development, especially from such things as carbon credits, can be funneled. Mr. Speaker, in my last budget speech, I read the salient part of the Auditor General's report of 2014, which detailed the abuse of the Armenian Development Fund by the PPP's Ministry of Armenian Affairs. I will not get into that, but you can research it on the Auditor General's report in 2014, where $1.2 million cannot be accounted for. Apparently, it was used as a slush fund.
Honorable member, I said abuse, so you're imputing that particular minister abused the fund. I don't think the Auditor General used abuse, so don't misquote him.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, the word abuse was not used, and I withdraw it. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, we have a number of recommendations that we can make about the whole carbon credit sale, etc. I will just give a few of them because of the time limits. The R3s we propose must be discussed at cumulative committee general meetings after a general people-friendly information package is rolled out. This subject, with all its implications, is far too important and serious to not have the blessings of the concept of FPIC. One important decision would be to agree with the government on the true amount of carbon credits that are available for sale. The monies already paid into the consolidated fund should be deposited in a bank account that pays interest. After the immediate beneficiaries have participated in an agreed process and general agreements made via FPIC, then the actual disbursements can be made by an implementing body set up by the NTC, as proposed yesterday by Honorable MP Cox. The National Teachers Council should be the lead agency for the indigenous component of the R3s in Guyana. For this to be successful, the NTC has to beef up its administration and fiduciary systems. They should include improved communication systems, accounting and auditing systems, and a project management unit, among other improvements. Mr. Speaker, I note that monies have been allocated to complete the National Teachers Council Secretariat. One must note that a secretariat could not have been possible if lands were not made available. It is opposite to note that the APNU AFC, via His Excellency David Arthur Granger, committed and granted prime lands within Georgetown so that the NTC could not only build an administrative center, but also build supporting facilities, such as boarding and lodging quarters, so that the executive and staff of the NTC may comfortably execute their duties and give improved services to the indigenous peoples of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I noted that the Honorable Senior Minister within the Ministry of Finance regularly embellished the 2023 budget speech with half-truths and total untruths. This is no surprise. We know that the telling untruths is a habit of the PPP. It is in their DNA. One such untruth the minister mentioned is that APNU AFC, in its recent stint of government, did not grant any title to the indigenous communities. Mr. Speaker, absolute grants of land titles extensions were granted by APNU AFC to Mainstay Wayaka, Mashabo, Kapui, and Yupokari. Legal boundaries were granted for Parabara, Rockstone, Tasserine, and Kangaruma. Also, some 45 investigations were completed, which included 32 for extensions and 13 for new villages. I know for a fact that the process of granting titles is somewhat lengthy, and that many communities are on the verge of getting their titles and extensions under the APNU AFC tenure. But the process was derailed because of the no confidence motion by the PPP. It must be noted that if the PPP had not been successful in their no confidence motion, many communities would have received their titles or extensions. These communities would have included Sand Creek, Shulinab, Paricornau, St. Ignatius, and many others. Mr. Speaker, I challenge the PPP to grant St. Ignatius Village a satisfactory title to their lands. All the paperwork was done just grant it now. But we know what will happen in St. Ignatius. St. Ignatius people, we know what will happen. Mr. Speaker, it was a total impasse for the PPP to hold a ceremony to hand over title to the village of Kangaroo and Tasserine in the Middle Mazarine Region 7, only to take it away from the village after the ceremony. They give them and they take it back at the same time. This is the duplicity of the PPP. That is what they are. Mr. Speaker, then the PPP, with much fanfare, handed over a title of extension to Yupakari at the last NTC conference, although the community had already received that same title from APNU AFC. This was a big joke in Rupununi and the indigenous communities. And that's the extent the PPP would go to try to fool, they're trying to fool the indigenous people. Mr. Speaker, the National Two-Shelves Council during the APNU AFC held their elections and conference in a democratic manner under the APNU AFC. Even the Honorable Deputy Speaker, who was the then Deputy Chairman of the NTC, praised the APNU AFC for allowing Two-Shelves of the NTC to mainly manage their own affair. Mr. Speaker, the opposite happened under the PPC's watch at the last NTC, held in 2022. The entire conference was stage managed by the PPP. This included the elections of the chairman. It is standard practice for the outgoing council to prepare and implement a handing over to the new council. However, the PPP ensured that the former council, including the chief, Nicholas Fredericks, was bypassed. Mr. Speaker, the NTC then looked like it was the NTC looked like it was then a PPP's conference. The coalition calls on the PPP to take its feet off the neck of the indigenous people. Mr. Speaker, in terms of governance, the Ministry of Marine Affairs practices what might be termed different strokes for different folks. Gail, Honorable Gail, hope you hear the one. Mr. Speaker, it seems that the Ministry of Marine Affairs is quick to conduct kangaroo courts against Two-Shelves and senior councillors who are accused of wrongdoings and are perceived to be opposition supporters.
To proceed, you will need an extension, honorable member.
Thank you, Comrade Speaker. Comrade Speaker, I do move that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Henry. You may proceed to conclude.
But the same ministry ignores such actions when accusations are made against village leaders who are known PPP members. Different strokes for different folks in one Guyana. And PPP officials who are accused of serious wrongdoings are allowed to walk free. Just recently in Karasabay, but we can't talk people's names, so we pass that. And who was talking name whole day yesterday and even today? Where is the honorable? This is perhaps the one Guyana that we hear of when one set of people are sheltered from facing justice. Mr. Speaker, another untruth spoken by the Honorable Minister of Finance was that the APNU AFC stopped training of indigenous youths when assuming government in 2015. And you hear from all of them that they like to tell untruths. Mr. Speaker, in a previous speech, I gave the corrected version of this matter, and we repeated so that the hard-headed honorables, that might be not be allowed, on the installed government side may know the facts. In 2015, APNU AFC, Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, found that the PPP's cabinet had instructed the then acting permanent secretary to cancel the check that was prepared to pay the CSO, thus causing the discontinuation of the CSO's program. Mr. Speaker, it must be noted that the PPP's cabinet secretary... Now,
Honorable Minister. Mike, I'm not hearing.
I wish to remind the House that in 2015 August,
Honorable Minister,
I stated,
Honorable
Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Minister,
I stated the standing order.
Yes.
Sorry if you shut up your head.
Honorable Minister, please. Honorable Minister,
Mr.
please.
Speaker, I said standing
Honorable
order
Minister.
40 subclause 1.
Honorable
I said
Minister,
it before.
Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, I heard you state the standing order, and you're standing on a point of clarification. For you to proceed, I'll have to get the leave of the current standing person on the floor. Honorable Mr. Henry, so that the Honorable Minister can make her clarification. Honorable Minister, I won't be able
Auna.
to.
In the
Go ahead,
recording, we
Honorable
say
Speaker.
Auna. Auna, Honorable Minister. Mr. Speaker, it must be noted that the then PPP Cabinet Secretary who signed the letter for the cancellation of the check is now a minister of the government and recently spoke. So, Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Speaker, point of order again.
Honorable Minister.
The honourable member is continuing misrepresenting an issue. Although he has refused me to speak, I am raising it a second time. Under Standing Order 40, Clause 1.
Honorable Minister, I'm sure the version from the government side will be presented when the next speaker speaks. Honorable Mr. Henry, you have a minute to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I've been interrupted several times. Can I get back that time, please?
You have your time, that extra minute. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. So, Mr. Speaker, whenever one hears the PPP speaking to the contrary, one can and must come to the conclusion that telling untruths is part, again, I repeat, of their DNA. And whatever they say must be taken with a strong dose of cough syrup or something or the other. Mr. Speaker, also the training of some 2,000 CSOs in multiple life skills, inclusive of entrepreneurship, was done by APNU AFC. And presentation was being made preparation was being made to double this to 4,000 when we came out of office. Using an improved curriculum, had the PPP not manipulated someone to launch a new confidence motion against the caring APNU AFC government. Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about the training of hinterland youth. Can the Minister of Army Affairs list the names of hinterland youths that's been facilitated to get training and employment in the oil and gas industry? Or is it that the Minister of Army Affairs feels that training and jobs in the oil and gas sector are not for hinterland youths? Mr. Speaker, another vexing issue is the PPP's seeming policy of placing square pegs in round holes. In a recent questioning of estimates, I raised the issue of a somewhat strange phenomenon that has been affecting many students in the secondary schools. It must be noted that the PPP members of Parliament laughed in a mocking manner when I raised this serious issue. Mr. Speaker, one such episode happened just a few days ago at the St. Ignatius School, when some students displayed paranormal behaviors during school hours. To date, the Ministry of Education is yet to make any comprehensive attempt to mitigate this serious problem. One is forced to question if the PPP is waiting for a death or deaths to occur before taking actions to find remedies. Mr. Speaker, in the absence of the Ministry of Education voice and a requisite solution to this troubling problem, please allow me to make some recommendations.
I trust they'll be finished in about 15 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will use a different place to make those recommendations. But in closing, Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask oh, so many, I have more. I hope, Mr. Speaker, I call on the instant government to raise the two sheriff stipends to at least $100,000 per month. The two sheriffs are also rural constables and should be paid whenever rural constables are entitled to get remuneration. And in closing, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that the budget is geared for abuse by the PPP. One minister and a big team with police vehicles flashing went to a village in Rupununi just to tell them that they will be getting a new well in the future. And so much money being wasted. It is our big spending and big kickbacks. Mr. Speaker, it is time for a change. It is time to balance development in Guyana with the poor getting their fair share of the patrimony. It is time to bring back APNUA.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member.